this briefly explains what we do with a DSP, what we do in the Grenadier to get the systems sounding the way that they do. Couple of the things that we do to make these things sound as good as they do. Okay, first thing we need is a DSP or a DSP amplifier. DSP is the heart of all of our systems. Pretty much every system we do has a DSP. If it doesn't, it's either in here for a damaged speaker or it's in here for a systematic upgrade path. So it's doing the front end first and then he's doing the DSP after, or an active sub box or whichever. But we pretty much always catch a DSP in the system. So that's not because they're expensive, it's not because it's an add-on sale, it's because of the control that it gives us. We can't just throw kit at a sound system, a pre-existing sound system, and expect it to be better or expect it to be what we want. But when we have control of every element of that sound, we can bend that in such a way to tailor to each of our listening styles. We're all different, we all hear things completely differently. So yeah, so that, you know, hardware, that's pretty much what you need, you know, in order to tailor the way the sound system works. Then you need the computer, you need the software, all right? So I'm gonna fire this up now, and I'm gonna just, I'm not gonna go through a tuning process. It's not a DIY channel, it's not what we do, but I wanna just give you a slightly better understanding of why these things sound as good as they do. This computer takes a little while, so bear with me. Should we listen to some music while we wait? Hopefully the mic can pick up that energy that the mid bass has in this car. It's great. Right, okay. It's enough of that or we'll get kicked off YouTube. Software, as you can see on here, plenty of softwares because we use a lot of different DSP products. I know you predominantly see us using Audison DSP products. We always have for 15 years now. That's the sort of our go-to DSP, but we've got things like the Moscone Glade and stuff on here, audio control stuff, the ATF DSP control tool for Helix. There's just, yeah, S8 DSP. There's loads of softwares, well, loads of versions of software that we've got on here for different DSPs, but what we do, how we get into your back end on your amplifier, we use Audison's bit drive. All right, it's not going to be the best, and I haven't got the techers to screenshot any of this. So that's your amp. So that's what we can see, that this is plugged in underneath the seat. We select the amplifier that's connected, and then what that does is it opens up the inside of the amplifier. These are all of the channels you have available. Every single channel has its own EQ. You can change that to graphic or parametric. And then you've got all of your time alignment products over here. I am not in the middle of these speakers. 2-channel stereo dictates we are equidistant from the speaker in order for things to sound realistic, okay? So you think of your triangle, you would sit in the middle and you would have your speakers. In the car, we don't get that, unless we were all rocking McLaren F1s. Anyway, so we're always sat offset. We need to slow that speaker down, okay? Its delta would be 90 centimeters because we are 55 here and 145 there. So we need to slow that speaker down points of a millisecond so that it is then digitally and sonically in time with that speaker and us in the listening position. And then you have your crossover and levels, well, your crossover points here and then your levels up top. Crossover and levels are where I do the majority of my work. I try not to EQ as much as I can. If I can get away with it naturally sounding good on levels and crossover points, it takes a little bit of time, then it will ultimately sound less less digitized, but you know, you do have to go for I tend to do it like an all over EQ, so an all channels EQ rather than a individual channel EQ, unless we've got a problem. At the risk of this becoming too boring, I'm trying to get information to you that you wouldn't usually get from our videos. But what we do is we hand over from the head unit its speaker outputs to a DSP product. What the DSP product does is it takes in those different signals and it sums them, it brings them all back together. Then we can pull them apart from a, hopefully in the majority, well, in this car at least, a full frequency band. Most cars don't really have that. They roll off at certain points and you have to basically generate different parts of the signal. But these cars are quite linear, quite flat, so we get a full bandwidth, full 20 to 20 as we'd say, that we then cut up and direct to each different speaker, so we know what each speaker's receiving, and then we know how to control it and where to control it. Then we give all of those outputs a certain crossover point to allow the speaker to work within its bandwidth, and then that speaker will naturally sound better than it will if you're trying to play it outside of its bandwidth. Say a mid bass, you know, playing it down to 20 hertz in a DAW, it's just not going to deal with that very well. So, you know, slightly higher low pass, a slightly lower high pass if you're running a three-way, things like that. Simple things to us, but things that you might not understand that go on. You give every single speaker its own bandwidth, its own natural bandwidth within its parameters, and the speaker will reward you for that. Plus, when you're doing that, you can have an amplification channel on each speaker. Each speaker then has a lot more power and a lot more independent control of that driver than it would do in, say, a passive system. You know, you've got none of the losses that the crossover or the passive crossover will give you or anything like that. With the amplifier that we install, so we use a 12.14 in these because space is a part of the spec. These are big cars, but they don't have a lot of usable space. We bridge, so this three-way front end will be completely bridged, so it'll get over 200 watts per driver, which gives you a lot of energy and a lot of headroom. You have to dial it back a little bit. Like I always say, pull it out, don't push it in. Do you know what I mean? It's just well, that's probably a terrible. Remove it, don't add it, all right? So headroom's the one. We also use attached to that amplifier the controller's down here. That allows us to use an independent volume control rather than the car, or we can still use the car. It doesn't remove one or the other. What it does do as well is it gives us subwoofer control, and it can do many other things. We try and limit what we do on our controllers. We don't want our clients having to mess through various settings, having to look down, having to push various things for, you know, 2-seat Monday tunes. That's just not what we want to do. We want to give a linear coverage on one setting that, you know, that we can all be happy with. Maybe another setting for more bass or less bass or whatever. But it just gives us that really quick subwoofer control. Another little tip as well, not to keep going on, but when you're using bass controllers and knobs to control bass, you don't need to look at them. Primarily, people look at the knob and see where they want it to be. Just feel it, just listen to it. There's no need for a visual reference on a subwoofer controller. If you've got enough bass, you've got enough bass. If you haven't, you can turn it up. If you turn it up and you haven't got enough, then you need to turn it up in the DSP software or on the amp or whatever, you know, or you might have a phase issue, but, you know, not in one of our cars. Yes, there's no need for a visual reference. With, it can cause psychoacoustic issues. It can make you think like you're maxing out almost your subwoofer, and that's where you're happy with it sounding, but you feel like you're maxing it out. And it might seem odd, but it is a thing. Psychoacoustics do govern a lot of what we think. So if we're running our head unit at full tilt all the time, because that's the volume we want, we might want that to be at 60%. And the only difference there is a psychoacoustic difference. It's not that it's going to be any louder. It might be louder if we dial it back to 60%, but it will start to clip very soon after, you know? So there are little things like that that you just, you know, that we think about that you don't have to think about. And now you know them. So great. Hopefully this hasn't been too boring. I'm going to run around Hugh's car now. The moment I open this door, it's going to get a fair bit noisier. I can already hear one of the saws running, fans running a lot. So yeah, this is a ridiculous system, this. I love it. So yeah, as you can see, there's a three-way Thesis A pillar. They don't need to look stupid. When we were building these, the size of them, the size of the drivers, we were concerned that they would just be too big and too obnoxious. And they really aren't. Let me zoom out so you get a sort of driver's eye view of this. You know, it really isn't that intrusive. I mean, we're using a wide angle lens right now, so they look probably twice the size that they actually are. Loads of money, a few grand for a front end. Like I always say, you know, if you've got it and you want to do it, then you shouldn't feel bad about it. They reward you with top quality Where's My Jumper.
Dancing in the disco, bumper to bumper. Wait a minute, where's me jumper? Where's me jumper?
That's enough of that, like I say. We'll end up getting kicked off. In the back, we have Morel Integra 4.2s. It's around the highest end 4-inch coaxial speaker that we can fit. Audison don't make a top quality 4-inch driver. They must just deem it unnecessary. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because we never use them, all right? We hardly ever sell them. In fact, outside of these cars and classic cars, and I mean like DB5s, SL250s, things like that, we never use a small coaxial driver. So there's just not really much of a market for them. But Morel's got us covered there, and it is the only inconsistency with brand inside this car. So yeah, but they're fully deadened and they're in there, and you can hear them as well. I'm going to show you the boot. The boot at the moment is that the subwoofer is in and working, but we're going to replace it because we're getting a couple of issues with 5G transmission with this subwoofer, so we're going to replace it. That is another beauty with using a product like Audison, is if we have an issue, we can correct it straight away. The warranty with us is 5 years if we register the product, all right? So sometimes 1 in 1,000 products maybe, we'll get something out of the box that just doesn't gel with the car. It'll either have rejection issues, it might not turn on, it might be damaged inside the box. They're replaced like that. So you know, like I've always said, specialist products do exist, and I know it's cool to use them. I know it's cool to bash sort of more, they're not mass market, but more popular products, but you can't get a replacement service like that. So yeah, there's nothing really to see in the back, but everything is everything's all back together as normal. Different trim in this. This is a really early one, and I've not actually seen this trim before. There's a couple of different things about this one actually than there are with the, you know, with the ones we're used to working on. And then in the back we've got the APBX10. Like I say, it's only kind of, it's been moved around a lot because we've been testing this particular unit and we think that it might have a fault. So we've got new units over there ordered to go in. So we've got the Wolf Box rear view camera just up there, which you can see sits on the front of his main rear view camera. Now when he turns up, he's got a bracket to allow that to be mounted to the windscreen. We're going to change that for him. So yeah, the one that was in the box just didn't work. Anyway, hope I haven't bored you to death, all right? But our Grenadier guys, they all seem to be a very a particular bunch, and I think that this sort of information they'll be happy with. Okay, it explains a lot more in this sort of 10 or 15 minutes or however long it ends up being than I can in an email. So our emails, of course, are quite detailed in terms of the system spec, but it doesn't let you know exactly what it is that we do sort of behind the scenes, or at least one element which I've covered today, which is the actual processing element of the system. You know, there's thousands of other things that we do, but the video would be so long and you would fall asleep to it. This is Hugh's Grenadier. He's from really far away and he's coming down. He's flown down today to pick it up, so I'm looking forward to see what he thinks. Anyway guys, Grenadier guys, or any car guys, give us a shout if you're interested. I'm Carl's Studio in Car. Take it easy.